Hans and Scotty, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Oh, wait a second. Yep, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just got fouled again. Joining us now, it is Kurt Helin, NBC Sports and ProBasketballTalk.com.
That puts Kurt in foul trouble now.
Kurt, that's your fourth foul, and we're only through the second quarter.
Oh, I'll foul out before the end of this call. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
People are grumpy. Shai's getting a friendly whistle, and people aren't having it.
Yeah, I think, look, if Minnesota wants to get some of those calls, maybe don't shoot 50-something threes and attack the rim a little more. It's just Oklahoma City's so good at taking away the paint and collapsing. And then, I mean, they've done this all year. They collapse and take away the inside and rightfully, frankly, believe they can recover quick enough and are smart enough and athletic enough that they're still going to contest well, and they do. But yeah, Shai's getting some MVP calls.
MVP calls, and it feels like every once in a while, it feels like any given year, the NBA designates the anointed one, whether it's James Harden or it's Steph Curry in these given championship years or runs to the MVPs or the big numbers that they put up. What is it about Shai's game that's just a little bit more adaptable and susceptible to the call and getting to the line?
Well, I think he's just very good at drawing contact. Not, I would say very much in a Harden way, although Harden was much more blatant about it. Like the second you reached in, he swung his arms through, and every time he gets touched, he throws his head back. He still does. By the way, he just doesn't get the calls the same way. Shai was able to draw a lot. Isn't quite as dramatic, but still is very good at drawing that contact to the point that the ref, as you saw last night, he does it so much the referees start to anticipate it, and so he slips and falls, and hey, that's a foul. They're anticipating the contact with him because he is so good at drawing it. And I'm guessing the next officials in the next game will swing that back a little bit, but Shai's still going to get to the line. He's still really good at it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Minnesota, and you can tell they're upset, you can tell they're angry about it, but I think to your point, now's the time to try to match that level of physicality because right now, if you're cranking threes and not trying to match it, then it's hard to really plead your case.
It is, and this is what Oklahoma City's defense has done all year. They show you something, then take it away. They switch things up, and their ability to maybe the most impressive thing about their defense, they swarm the ball with a couple of guys. Especially if you put your back to the basket, man, they are coming. They're going to swarm with two or three guys and try to force a quick rough pass that's a turnover or make a mistake or steal the ball. But what's crazy is, like, nobody ever seems open. They'll have three guys on the ball and two other guys kind of zoned off. And, like, how come nobody else is open? But it never feels that way. They're just seemingly everywhere. And that I'm not sure Minnesota is going to crack this quick enough. I think Anthony Edwards, we've kind of watched in real time this playoffs, right, where he's like, oh, so they're doing this and I have to do this. And he's learning how to get his teammates involved. He's really, really good at making like the first pass and the simple pass and the clean pass out. I'm just not sure he's going to be able to figure out the Oklahoma City defense fast enough. And if they turn the ball over 19 times a game, this is going to be really short.
So do you think that Chris Finch pulled the team in and they're like, all right, fellas, I've got the formula. I know how to crack Oklahoma City. Dante DiVincenzo, come up here. All right, Dante here is going to take 12 threes. What is that? Is that a game plan, or did DiVincenzo just say, I'm out here, I might as well shoot it?
I think that's this is what, when you get that paint taken away, this is the instinct, right? You kick it out and you shoot, and Oklahoma City's bet has been, you're not going to knock down enough threes to beat us. Like, you're just not going to be able to keep up. And their defense has been very good all year. And Minnesota led when in the first half when they started shooting 50%. I mean, or whatever it was early on. They were knocking down a lot of threes early, and particularly, I mean, Julius Randle had a good game and was just on fire in the first half. And you're going to need some of that every night against this defense. they're going to have to not turn the ball over, and they're going to have to find a way to score enough to keep up, and that's been the problem. And Oklahoma City's defense has just locked people down all season.
Even if you take the friendly whistle out of it, it just feels like Oklahoma City's the better team. And I'm sure Minnesota will win a game or two, and I would love, just from an entertainment standpoint, for this thing to go 7. But it just feels like Oklahoma City's just got too much right now.
Heck, man, I will tell you, I will repeat what I wrote after Game 7, which is Oklahoma City just won the NBA title. Like, that was the series that was going to be the biggest test for them. This is not a good matchup for Minnesota, and I don't think either of the teams from the East are a good matchup against Oklahoma City. They've went through the team that could give them the most problems, and did, by the way. I mean, it took them 7 games and forced them to learn how to win some gritty games, which was something they didn't do a year ago. They can play down in that muck now better than they could, and I'm with you. I just think they're the best team, not only in this series but left. If they don't beat themselves, they should get this.
Is there anything that Rudy Gobert can do to be just any more productive offensively?
They're going to need something, but this is one of those series that's a tough matchup for him because, I mean, you guys have seen this firsthand. The problem is if you get to a team who can really space you 5 out, genuinely space you 5 out, and has guys who can get downhill, you run into a problem of he can't be 2 places at once. And that's what happened, years ago with the Clipper comeback, where they had guys who could get downhill and they played small and were able, with Morris out in the corner and everybody else, and put him in an impossible situation. And this is sort of the same thing. They can either just play Chet Holmgren, and they couldn't do that against Jokic because Jokic has 100 pounds on him, do you think, guys?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Easy. So he'd just back him down, but that's not really Rudy's game. Rudy's not going to get the ball in the high post and just back you down and maybe hit a little turnaround or something like Jokic. And if you're not getting him balls by the basket, it's hard. And they can also, they did it last night. They just went centerless. I guess Jalen Williams is technically the center, but they go really small. And again, you can't keep Rudy on the floor in that situation. He doesn't punish them enough, and they can exploit him defensively or exploit what he can't really do defensively. So I think this is a really rough series for Rudy, but it'd be great if they could get one game where he just dominated the glass and dominated inside enough to get some putbacks and some dunks, and they need one Game 5 against the Lakers game out of him this series to have a chance.
All right, so let's shift to the East, and the Knicks are certainly riding high after what they've been able to accomplish. Can they carry that momentum into the Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, it's going to be nice and quiet and peaceful at Madison Square Garden tonight, guys.
Yeah.
I think they can. I think that they're really playing their best basketball right now. And a lot of that is simply not only did Towns fit in there. I was just finishing up a story about how look back at that Towns and Randall trade right about now, and you're like, yeah, I kind of think both teams won that.
It's a win-win.
At the time, it really was a salary dump. I mean, they saved, $9 million. But at the time, we're like, yeah, and at the end of the year, they just let Randall go, and they're, retool this thing. I'm like, no, you can't let Randall go. Like, you're going to have to save some money somewhere else now. They probably this is going to hurt them, but there's probably Naz Reid. Like, that might be the guy who has to go because he's going to be he can opt out, and anybody smart who's been watching the playoffs is going to go pay that man some money. So anyway, I think that they're playing that well, but this is you get this, guys. I think this is a toss-up series. And what's fun about it is it's really a styles make fights kind of thing, right? You've got Indy wants to play faster, but even in the half court, their ball movement and play do what Anthony Edwards does. We were saying he's learned to drive and make the smart, pass out. Halliburton drives and thinks 2 plays ahead. Like, he is not only making that pass, he is whipping that pass 2 places ahead before the defense is rotated there. I don't know that the Knicks are going to be able to slow that down considerably, but they are tougher. They are grittier. They are going to get offensive rebounds. It's going to be a great series. It's such a styles make fight series that's the one I think, guys. Are we getting 7 games of this?
Sure hope so.
7 games?
Yeah. I think it's very likely that it goes 7. Speaking of which, going 7 with this series and having New York a part of it, how excited is the NBA to have New York relevant? And how much are they hoping that New York can survive and can proceed into a championship series?
I know that the television executives at ABC would be thrilled because I'm not sure Oklahoma City, Indiana is the massive market draw that they are hoping for. Obviously, New York changes that, and Oklahoma City will start to draw more. I think, look, San Antonio used to eventually draw big names and stuff because it's not a big market, but people tuned in to see. Well, nobody tuned in to see Tim Duncan, but they tuned in to see Manu and Tony Parker, right? Like, anyway, and I think people will come around to Shea and Oklahoma City as a team worth watching. But yeah, I'm sure the league office and the executives are rooting very, very hard for New York to go through. And certain members of the media who will be traveling with the finals and have to spend a week or so in each of those cities may be rooting for New York over Indianapolis as well.
I don't think we know of anybody in particular that applies to.
Kurt's sitting there with a cold envelope.
I can't think of one person, directly, but theoretically.
Kurt's just hoping for lottery balls.
All right, so Kurt, congratulations! You are now the new general manager of the Utah Jazz. You have replaced Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck, and you have Philadelphia saying we want to get rid of Paul George's contract. We will take on Lauri Markkanen, and we will give you the number 3 pick, so you have number 3 and number 5. But you got to eat that Paul George contract for the next 2 and maybe 3 years on that player option. Do you do it?
First off, it's 3 years.
No, I know. Yeah.
There's not a chance he doesn't pick that up, and there's at 30, would be 37, 38 at that point. There's no chance anybody's paying him that. Wow, that's a really good question. Because you get to move up. Getting that number 3 picks makes it tempting. But I guess it depends a little bit on this. Do I think I can, is there another place I can send Markkanen this summer where I get quality back? Do I have a sense that there's something else that can happen where I can get a good player back or picks that I don't have to just, because that contract is virtually unmoved. You're stuck with it, right? You are, once you get that contract, you've got 3 years, and Paul George isn't going to be happy to be there.
Nope.
And
oh man,
he's professional. If you ever get to interview him, he's a great guy. He's a really thoughtful, smart guy. He will be professional about this, but that's not. He wants to compete for it all right now, and you'd be trying to flip him, and he's going to have to play really well for a year for there to be any chance of flipping that contract somewhere. My guess is I wouldn't do it. I'd have to really think about it, or if I were really high on Bailey or Edgecombe, maybe. Those would be that's the 2 you're choosing from at 3.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure either of those guys is worth the risk. Bailey has that upside, but I'm not totally convinced he can get there, and I'm not sure I'm willing to take on for a rebuilding team. Taking on that Paul George contract is an anchor. Well, if things start to go right.
And the great thing about having young superstars on your team is you get them on the cheap. But while you have those players on the cheap, you're paying Paul George an exorbitant amount of money, so it kind of negates that. Yeah,
exactly. Ultimately, I think there comes a point, and look, we've talked about this. This is where San Antonio is. It's the same spot the Washington Commanders are in, frankly, right now.
Yeah.
Better load up while the guy's on a cheap contract. Your quarterback, or in this case, your Wemby, is on a cheap contract, because in a couple of years, he's going to get the Rose Rule Supermax, and he's going to be expensive the rest of the way out. They've got to do it now this summer. So in the same sense, if you do that as Utah, you tie your hands there a little bit. You don't have the room to just start taking guys in and making these bigger plays. So I probably wouldn't do that. Paul George might have one of the, if it's not the most toxic contract in the league, I'd have to think about that. It'd be in the top 3. I mean, I don't maybe the only one that's worse is Embiid's. I'm not sure who else I don't want from that group.
Well, just to kind of surmise this, because I am intrigued at least by the thought of the move, but you did mention some of his characteristics, just him as a good person or maybe a role model, because you think about it, he's coming in with Isaiah Collier and Kyle Filipowski and Keontae George and Taylor Hendricks and Walker Kessler, and the list goes on. Bryce Sensabaugh, for young guys, and not to mention the number 5 pick and the number 3 pick that he would end up being in that locker room with. He would have to be an influence to these young guys. What kind of influence do you think he would be in Salt Lake City with the Utah Jazz, knowing that he's kind of on a toxic contract?
The thing is, he'd be great at that. And he, frankly, has done that other places. There's not a ton of it in Los Angeles right now, or wasn't in Los Angeles. There's obviously in Philly, there's Jared McCain and whatever, and I guess Tyrese Maxey. We'll still consider Tyrese Maxey young, but in a situation like this, I think he'd be great as a mentor and just a guy who, look, you need somebody in those locker rooms, and Utah needs to have that guy who's just professional, right? And just, hey, I'm showing up to work, and this is how we're doing it, and this is how you take care of your body. This is how you take care of your game. This is the work you put in, that you have to lead by example as much as it's one thing to say it. You've got to have somebody who actually does it in the locker room. And it's why Jared Dudley played well beyond his years and stuff. Like, there's guys who do that. I think he could fill that role. I don't think that's the role he wants to fill.
Yeah.
But he absolutely would be. And remember, this is a guy who, after that leg injury with Team USA and the scrimmage in Vegas, however many years ago that was,
it feels like 20
we weren't
years
sure he'd
ago.
Ever be back to. Yeah, I didn't think he'd be back to this. I didn't think he'd be back to being a max kind of guy. That was nasty, and the work it took to get back here is the kind of thing you want to instill in people.
Kurt, you're the best, man. We appreciate it, and go enjoy the games this week, and we'll do it again next week.
I want New York for you.
Yes, I do too. We're all on the New York bandwagon for Kurt Helin.
In no way did my New York Times app pop up today and say, hey, here's the 10 best pizzas or 20 best pizzas in New York right now. I'm like, I'm bookmarking that just in case. Just in case I need to find good pizza.
There is this place in Indianapolis. I was just out there for the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. This really good pizza place had Little Caesars, I think. It was solid.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
pizza.
Yeah, it was like
I know
$5. They said it was hot and ready to go. I mean,
there you go.
There you go, man. I think you'll be all right.
I found one place I loved when I was in Indianapolis, a place called First Watch, a little breakfast lunch place. And I'm like, I wonder if this is going to be good. This looks like a cute little place. And I walk in and I go to sit down, and 3 tables over, and it's just myself. I'm just going to get myself breakfast. Like 3 tables over, it's Charles Barkley and Bill Murray together because it's All-Star Weekend and all these people are there. And you're like, well, I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
This is going to be good. So I found a couple of places there, but it's,
And you can only go to St. Elmo's so many times. I mean, I love St. Elmo's,
exactly.
Don't get me wrong.
Well, St. Elmo's is great. Yeah. No, they do have some good stuff. They don't have quite the variety, and it might not be open quite as late.
Yes, that's true.
There's a lot of places in Indy that will check your tetanus card before they'll serve you. So that's good. Make sure that you're up to date.
Hey, Kurt, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Take care, guys.
You got it. There he is, Kurt Helin, NBC Sports and ProBasketballTalk.com, and a man that wants to get himself to New York to eat some good food.